Hello to everyone at home. For those who weren't here this morning, I just mentioned that here we have Ajahn, Jonathan, Hambak, Hai, and Mai from Vietnam, Kun Warasak, Betty, Chitabala, our old friend, and maybe one or two, Eve in the next room, and maybe one or two others joining. Did I say Betty? Maybe, yes, I did, right. And Tiny Tom's coming. Yes, one or two still coming. You mentioned this morning, well, I mentioned that we may continue talking a little more about Sila because there was mention of Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So often there are different understandings of what Sila is. So let me ask Jitapala, what is your understanding of Sila? Asking is because you mentioned about Sila as a prerequisite for understanding, I think.
I think some of the commentators, they'll use like a simile of Sila, which in Pali can also be a word meaning rock. But I think stability of the mind through having training in speaking and acting in skillful ways. And actually by doing that practice over time, then some of the unskillful ways will be left behind. For example, if we train in the 5 precepts, they're training. So I train myself not to take the life of living beings, not to steal, not to perform sexual misconduct, not to take intoxicants, and what was it, the other one? Anyway, that actually trainings by actually habit forming. So if one actually practices, it actually elevates the mind. So that if one practices Sila over a long time, and my understanding is that the Buddha spoke about Sila quite a lot as a basis to for practicing, and especially monks that really highly emphasize Sila because they have different sorts of Sila as well.
Excuse me, you mentioned training. How do you train someone to follow Sila?
Well, when you undertake the 5 precepts, I undertake to train myself in this precept.
Yes,
exactly
okay,
what.
So how is that done?
When there's the opportunity to kill, you don't kill. You train yourself. You have Yoniso Manasikara. I'm not going to do that.
But there is no. But if you believe in anatta, there is no control. In other words, a thought enters your mind. Say somebody says, okay, in the morning, he takes the 5 precepts from a monk. He says, okay, I'm not going to kill. That afternoon, he sees somebody and thoughts enter his mind. Oh, I hate this person. I hate this person. And he wants to kill that person. Because the Buddhist path does have a path, if you want to call it training, but it's not training in the normal sense in the accepted conventional sense of the term. How does one train
exactly
to follow the Sila?
Because one knows what's the best thing to do, and even if one has urges to not follow a particular Sila, one doesn't or tries not to. So that's why the Buddha said, not like commandments, don't do this, don't do that. One trains one.
So how do you take into account then accumulations and conditions and so forth?
My understanding is that mind is, it changes according to what habits we have of mind. Same as if you want to train yourself in a job, or you become good at your job. If you want to train yourself in a sport, you put in a huge amount of training.
That's a different kind of training.
No, it's training the mind in that you create strength through habits of actions. If we keep doing unskillful things, it leads to being unskillful.
Oh yes, I agree with you totally.
So if we train ourselves to do skillful things, make a conscious effort, we actually have to. And talking about everything's anatta, but people don't really understand anatta until quite far along the path, as far as I understand.
Right, right.
So
People don't
we've got to
understand
start somewhere.
this. Yeah. So there has to be some way training, and the path basically. If there is listening, and there are conditions for listening, and there are conditions for consideration or picharana in Thai, and there's conditions for understanding to arise. That's basically, if you want to call that training, but that's basically with with pariyati understanding of how the path is developed. And do you agree with that as being training, if you want to call it training of the path?
Well, we'll just go back a step. I assume I hope you try and keep the 5 precepts. They become like part of your being to not practice those things.
Yeah, but it comes because there's understanding is developed to the point of letting go, well, of not of letting go, or of not doing that particular non-sila. Okay, what do we call it?
So you have understanding is what that makes keeping those precepts become part of oneself. And one does that for a long time, you don't even think about killing,
Right.
stealing,
So then,
drinking all these things.
so then how
one's actually
how is understanding developed?
There's different types of understanding, but Sikha training is also used in like somebody who's training on the path. They'll be called Sikha. That's up to the fourth
Right,
stage
whatever.
of enlightenment. The one who's no longer training is called Asika. That's
Yeah.
the Arahant. So they're training.
And what are they doing to train? What is the training that is occurring?
Like even the Sotapanna is the trainee, the Seka, the one that is training in the development. It's just referring to the understanding, which is development. That is the training. And when it comes to Sila, like you agreed this morning, it's just one moment at a time. So it has to be back to now. So can one say that at moments of kusala, there is kusala sila, at moments of akusala, there's no kusala sila. I won't say akusala sila now because you'll say that's in the commentaries, but there's kusala sila now or akusala sila. So for example, at a moment of thinking now about abstaining from alcohol, what is the chitta? Is it kusala or akusala? So if it's kusala sila, it has to be the moment of kusala. And if there's no understanding, it can't be known. So it cannot just be a conventional situation like someone who for the last month hasn't drunk alcohol, has good sila. That's not the meaning, because the meaning has to refer to the kusala chitta at the moments of abstaining, and other kinds of kusala, like for example, when paying respect or appreciating kusala. When the chitta is kusala, then it's kusala sila for a moment only. And it's just a dharma that's conditioned, not anyone's sila.
Can you remember times when you've practiced sila, or at least the Buddhist way, the precepts all one's life? Remember times before when you didn't? And how was the mind at that time?
This is when you say times you've practiced the Buddhist way, but from my understanding, the Buddhist way is about the truth of different realities. It's not about anyone practicing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about I deciding I'm going to follow the precepts, but at the moment of abstaining from telling a lie, for example, when there's an opportunity, it's virity. If it's with kusala chitta, then it's the wholesome virity at that moment that can be abstaining with akusala, because one's concerned what other people may think, or because one will be scolded by the teacher. So it has to refer to moments of kusala, and the development of kusala, as we mentioned, has to be with understanding, not I practicing by reciting and deciding I'm going to follow the precepts.
Entirely. But I think maybe if one's sila is, if take out the word one, we just say that sila is developed, then we'll get to the stage where there's not an opportunity to commit a kusala. The mind is not interested in doing it anymore. The mind has changed the habits of the mind. So there might be, say, to lie, but it wouldn't have consideration. And not even people who are Buddhists, if people come to life with different backgrounds, they won't have propensity to lie under any conditions. So it's the accumulations of the mind, and understanding is going to make sila work without understanding it.
On the other hand, if there is the propensity to lie, then no amount of training does anything to ameliorate that propensity. It's accumulated, it's there. And what you call the training for sila is just about what arises, not what is latent as an accumulated tendency. And they cannot be changed except by the development of insight, which will eventually eradicate those akusala tendencies. But even the person who develops jhana to the highest degrees and then is reborn and so forth, and eventually when that kusala kamma expires, that person is still with the accumulated tendencies that were there before the jhanas were developed. So it's just staying in the round of rebirths doesn't take one away from the round of rebirths.
Is the development of virtue in all its respects. It's very important for developing kusala upasampada, developing all kusala that the Buddha spoke about this very often, developing of virtue.
Well, I think we have to, the question is whether it's a prerequisite to the development of understanding.
It's all round development, all round. So that's, don't put anything first.
So the accumulated tendencies that are there now are what will be there at the end of this lifetime too. So there's no point in dwelling on the fact that there's this amount of akusala in one's daily life, because the development of understanding can go on regardless of how much the akusala tendencies are manifesting.
I think the Buddha would talk about understanding if one has unwholesomeness, and to use to have less by understanding the teachings. I think that's right through the teachings.
Sorry, have less what?
Akusala.
How can one have less akusala if the tendencies accumulated?
What
does that mean?
You're talking about the tendencies being permanent. All of these sankharas are impermanent and got liable to change, so they can be changed. And saying that somebody changed them, one doesn't really understand not self or anatta until my understanding, until one's well practiced in the path, one's along the path. So in the beginning, we all come along, we have the idea of I'm coming here.
I see we have a difference about the effect of the accumulated tendencies, because you think they can be changed in this lifetime.
Undoubtedly, I have no doubt at all.
And what's the support for that in the teachings?
Well, understanding the Dhamma and practicing it and taking out the word I, or we don't have to put I practice or one practice.
No, we don't have to worry about using
practice of the Dhamma brings wonderful results.
When you say practice of the Dhamma, you're referring to what?
Everything, every aspect of practice. So kindness, speech, dana, one's mindfulness, everything comes together. It has to be.
And so what's the difference between, so a person who has never heard the Dhamma can still develop sila and jhana. So is that person also eradicating the kusala tendencies? Well, to your understanding?
They might be quite a moral person, and if they're doing that in the framework of of Buddha's teachings, it will work. But I'd like to ask people here in general.
Wait, I'd like an answer to my question. The person who has never heard the Dhamma but can develop, say, jhana and has good sila, is that person changing their accumulated, getting rid of unwholesome accumulated tendencies?
I think that's a hypothetical, because one, that person could have heard Buddha's teachings in an earlier life, so that might have led them on the path to being the morality, etc. They might have heard, and people have different aptitudes for wanting to. Some people might be just interested in only sila. Some people might be
according to your understanding of the teachings,
only dana, or some people interested in developing, going more deeply into Dharma. It all depends on accumulations.
Let's give Ajahn an opportunity to add her comments.
Is there akusala sila? It's in Tipitaka,
In the suttas.
akusala.
Is it in the
Sila.
suttas? Because that's my basis.
What about kusala dhamma,
Kusala Dhamma.
akusala dhamma,
Yeah.
apiyakata dhamma,
Abhidhamma.
and kusala sila, akusala sila,
Maybe in the Abhidhamma, but not in the suttas.
apiyakata sila.
Well, again, it might be in whether it's in some section of the Digha Nikaya, whether it's in the suttas or not, I don't know. It might be in the Abhidhamma.
Patisambhada Magga, Dhamma Sangani, it's Tipitaka.
This is a big line of discussion here. I take the older texts as having more authority and relevance than later texts, because, as we know, that it's only the Vinaya and the suttas that were recited at the first council, so it's later.
Is any word of truth in Tipitaka? There in Tipitaka.
I'm not so sure. This is a big line of division, Ajahn Sujin, because I don't necessarily. I accept the Abhidhamma for what it is, but I don't really think. I just think about Sutta and Vinaya mostly, and Abhidhamma is useful to some extent.
what
That's a
is
difference, big difference there.
Dhamma, and what is Paramada Dhamma, and what is Abhidhamma?
Well, Abhidhamma is things that are real and can be experienced directly. So Abhidhamma is mentioned in the suttas.
Is Dhamma Abhidhamma?
If you want to use that definition of Dharma, yes.
No, it that's to depend on the word.
It depends on whether you want to apply it to like
So what
Dhamma
is the meaning of Abhi
higher usually.
Dhamma
Yes, it's usually.
or Dhamma? Is it easy to understand, to realize, even hardness now?
Yes, and
Is it easy?
depends on each person. Their
Is
accumulations.
it Ariya Satya?
Hmm?
Is it Ariya Satya? Dhamma?
No, I'd say Arya Satya is realization of the Four Noble Truths. I don't call it. It's just
Whatever arises false way, is that the first Ariya Satya?
I think it's understanding it deeply enough so that it becomes Arya Satya. So it really only becomes Arya Satya, the realization of the first part. It's not Arya at all. You can't
hardness.
say ordinary understanding is Arya. That is not realization.
Does hardness arise?
Does it appear?
If it does not arise, can it appear?
Same. I mean, it appears to wherever
Okay.
it's experienced.
Now, hardness does not appear yet.
Well, it might. I mean, hardness can be anywhere. It doesn't have to
No,
be just.
but at moment of touching,
Well, we've been
does it
we've been through
appear?
this. I might touch and I might experience heat. So I don't think I might experience softness.
No, you, right?
Not me, but I mean, that's what may be experienced. It
There
doesn't
must
necessarily.
be the reality which arises and experience that hardness,
Yes,
which is touch only, not other hardness.
one may experience hardness, one may not. Depends on one's
We
experience.
just learn to understand whether hardness is a Dhamma or not.
Yes, anything of it's rupa, it's mahabhuta, it's Dhamma.
So
It's
Dhammas are conditioned to arise to be different characteristic. Hardness cannot be sweet, but sweetness is real and hardness is real.
Yes,
Is it Dhamma?
yes, it's
So whatever is there conditioned to arise is Dhamma.
yes,
Hardness is Dhamma too.
yes.
And what is meant by Dhamma?
That's one aspect of Dharma, like things that experiencing things in the present moment, and the aspect of the
Is
teaching
it
as well.
now arises in false way?
Everything's always,
Hardness, is it now, arises and falls away?
everything we experience arises and falls away.
Even who experiences or not.
If we're not experiencing, we don't know. We have to experience it.
Okay. If it does not arise, can it be experienced?
Something can.
Really?
Something can.
If it does not arise,
But
how can it be
there's a
object?
Dhamma that doesn't arise. So that's what I'm referring to.
That's
Yes, it doesn't arise and fall away.
But the hardnesses, the elements, the conditioned realities, regardless of whether they're experienced, like every element of hardness is anicca, sabbe dhamma,
but-
anicca. So
but-
regardless, but if it doesn't appear, if it's not experienced, it can't be known. But still,
I
whether
think-
or not it is known,
I don't-
every reality is
Yeah, but I don't
impermanent.
think it's useful to think about things we can't experience. So I think there's like the Zen thing. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Or what is the tree that falls in the forest? Is there sound? Because it takes somebody consciousness to actually experience that sound. Unless there's actually consciousness of a particular object, but can't really say anything about it. So
Like visible object now that is seen, it's experienced, it's impermanent, but it doesn't appear. Usually it's not known. It's gone instantly, completely unknown. So whether or not it's appears, whether or not it's understood, it's that which is seen, and it's seen for an instant and then gone.
yes, and that won't be known unless one experiences it directly.
So there has to be that's the Suttamaya Panya, in order for there to be the Chintamaya Panya, the wise considering, let alone the direct understanding. There has to be the hearing and considering about it first. Otherwise, there cannot be the direct knowing.
It's Sankara, Dhamma. Yes, it's Dhamma. Of course it
no
is.
matter sankhara or visankhara, what is real is Dhamma.
Yeah, yes, there is, of course.
That's why we
And-
learn about Dhamma, everything which is real.
I mean, everything we experience and we don't conceptualize it, that's actually real. But then we have those other levels of interpreting through sanya and manasikara and thinking, etc. But everything we experience there all the time. It's the five khandhas never leave us. They're always there. That's how to know them directly.
And
So,
which one is I?
no I there at all.
No I.
No I there at all.
Hardness is not a cup.
No, it's not.
It's a reality.
Yeah,
Appear only at moment of touching, not
yes,
seeing.
yes.
No one can see hardness at all.
Yeah, it's only going away.
And at moment of hardness, is it dark or right or light?
Hardness is hardness. It's all, and that's just a word we give to it anyway. And as my understanding, it can also be element of extension can be softness as well. One and the same
Yeah.
thing, hardness or softness.
And now we learn to understand more about what is real, to understand the truth that it cannot be taken for anything at all, right?
Yeah.
Even it's hard. It's not a cup, it's not my finger.
No.
So it's a reality. And it can be known only at moment of touching that it's there. And then when it's not touched, where is it?
Well, consciousness will be somewhere else, experiencing another object. That's all. So
Gone
it's gone.
forever,
Yeah.
never to return.
Yeah.
Like seeing now. If we don't talk about seeing, we forget seeing at all. No thought about it, just thinking about that which is seen. But there must be seeing.
Yes.
Otherwise, the world cannot appear
Yes.
at all. So is that which is seen a reality?
Yes.
What is its nature?
Something that's experienced by eye consciousness. I've done this already.
Right. Can it be a cup seen?
No, of course not. There's many levels of perception and thinking. Like, a child has to learn something that's hard, soft, round. Eventually, when they learn language, they can say this is a ball or whatever. It's many different levels of conditioning to actually give a name to something.
So is the world permanent?
Is the world?
Word.
No, how can it be permanent?
Not permanent at all.
How can anything be permanent?
Arising and falling away.
Yes,
Okay.
how
Can
can-
it be directly experienced?
of course,
How?
through direct experience.
What,
And use what words when
what experience it?
panya.
And what is the nature of Panya?
It's to know, but also to know things more and more deeply, so that one, can more and more deeply, and that has effects on the nature of the mind eventually.
It's the moment of understanding the truth of what is there. For example, there is seeing, so we learn about seeing. At moment of seeing that it's there, not that
Yes,
which is
different-
seen.
different moments.
Different moments.
Yes.
Is it Dhamma?
Yes.
So is hardness Dhamma?
Yes.
It is when it's
Dhamma.
there. Yeah.
Yes.
At the moment of understanding hardness, is it kusala sila?
I'm not. I would just say kusala because it's a wholesome mind moment with panya. I'm not so au fait with those words kusala sila, so we can discuss it.
Because the way that I understand sila is relating to the nature or behavior of chitta, and chitta can be kusala, akusala, or avyagata in the case of the arahat. So at moments of kusala, no matter whether it's a moment of abstaining from unwholesomeness, a moment of giving, a moment of paying respect, or a moment of understanding, it is kusala sila. And at any other moments of akusala, it's the opposite. So people tend to think about taking precepts and not killing for 5 years as being kusala sila. But as we said this morning, life exists in a moment. There is death at each moment. So what about, for example, when making a presentation in the temple or an offering or helping one's friend or giving a gift? Is it kusala sila or just at the moments when the chitta is kusala?
There's many moments, but I think in some definitions, that's probably giving is considered part of sila. But I mean, my understanding of giving is that whatever one does is to do everything more and more selflessly, so that there's no idea of any return. There's no one doing a good deed, and there's no expectation of getting anything in return. And that actually is a purification of giving. That's how I understand it.
So
That's my experience as well. So.
Yes. So at the moments of true giving, when there's no clinging, no
Yes.
expectation, those are moments of
Yes.
giving, and those we would say also moments of kusala. They're moments of kusala, you agree, or kusala sila. It doesn't matter about the words, but at the moments of clinging or enjoying the gift or expecting something, then it's not kusala, it's akusala. So it's the same with, for example, when abstaining from killing, at moments of kusala, when one sees the harm of hurting, or when there is kindness and friendliness, at those moments it is kusala sila. But at moments of abstaining because one wants to keep the precept, or because this is what one has been told, or because one doesn't want to look ugly in front of others, then it cannot be said to be kusala sila. So it's just for a moment. Any kusala is just for a moment.
Yes. So sorry, John. Done with understanding, so that one doesn't just refrain from a certain action because one's taken a precept, or because one's going to look bad in front of others, or whatever. It's actually becomes part of, in conventional terms, who one is, what one's heart is. That one heart doesn't want to harm, and one doesn't even have to choose between whether I do this or not do it. It like becomes part of, same as giving. You give, people even know you give so often, it's second nature. Or helping. You see somebody who has a problem or suffering, you don't think, oh, should I do it? Or other people don't think I'm good, or just do it because you want to help, and it becomes part of one's being.
And the sila, the kusala sila that the Buddha taught about, is with the understanding of Dhamma, with the understanding of not my giving, not my kusala. So Adi Sila, the higher Sila, Adi Sila, Adi Chitta, Adi Panya, has to be with right understanding of Dharma. Otherwise it's just always my giving. And
I think Adi Sila is usually referred to people who are quite well practiced. The idea of Adi Sila in the suttas and things, some higher Sila. How can it not be with understanding? It has to be. How can it not be?
So you talk about developing sila and other kusala until it becomes a habit and doing things selflessly and understanding with understanding. What fundamental change, if any, is happening to the accumulated unwholesome tendencies? Because what I'm suggesting is that it's a bit of a trap to think that one has somehow innately changed and no longer capable of breaking this precept or that precept, because given the accumulated tendencies, it just needs the right conditions for them to arise. And no amount of resolve and deliberate inculcation of habitual action can have any impact on those accumulated tendencies, because behavioral things are at one level, but at the level of the underlying tendencies, that's another level altogether.
And there might be some people who are not Buddhist, for example, and maybe have never told a lie in their whole life. Doesn't mean that sometime they won't, if we believe in future lives, or they may never have killed in their whole lives.
That's right. But I'm talking about what you were saying about practicing sila so that it becomes, as you put it, a part of your being.
Yes.
I think that's a myth.
No, I think if one has understanding, it's not, because it's also understanding the nature of one's own heart, one's own mind, and what so if there's any akusala there or not.
What is being understood when you talk about doing it with understanding? What is actually being understood?
Understanding one's mind. Understanding the mind, whether there's kusala or akusala in it, knowing if kusala thoughts arise or they don't arise. It's knowing oneself.
So just knowing the difference between kusala and akusala.
No, knowing if there's
and
there
does
or
that
not.
Understanding also see those kusala and akusala moments as conditioned?
I think the more one practices, and again, you've got to be careful with these words, and the whole idea is to go beyond self. So the more one practices selflessness in different ways, practices love, compassion in different ways, it all enriches one's being and is all part of the mind towards liberation. That's what I believe from studying Buddhist teachings.
For you, the development of understanding is not about understanding, say, seeing invisible object, which we've been talking about.
It's all part of the path. It's all part of the path. Not to compartmentalize the path, just saying understanding is only this. It's broad. And
so is there any selection of what is to be the object of understanding?
No, of course not.
No. So when developing sila, it's rather sounds like you're suggesting the focus of the understanding is got to be on the mental states at the time.
Why does one not kill? Why does one not kill? Hopefully people understand that they don't want to kill living beings. Why does one not do that? Because of understanding, isn't it? You don't want to harm
necessarily. It doesn't have to be with understanding.
Oh, yourself.
People who have never heard the Dhamma can have compassion to other beings, as we just agreed. So it doesn't need understanding of the kind that the Buddha taught at the development of the path.
Well, as I said in that lunch break, that almost like the key phrases which are repeated everywhere in Buddha's teachings is non-doing of all evil, the arousing of all skillfulness, purification of the mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas, and that's just like a cornerstone.
And the purification comes from the development of understanding.
It comes from everything.
But specifically understanding, without understanding.
If you go into the commentaries, what maybe like the the Rata Vinita, so we talk about purification of sila, purification of citta, then purification according to the different levels that we pass in our knowledge. So it's all connected according to the suttas. So, I mean, if we want to achieve to have the peaceful mind that supposedly a liberated person would have, then we want to have a mind that's not interested in harming, killing. We want to have a mind that's compassionate and generous. My voice is going.
You wanted to ask these people some question. What was it you wanted to ask them?
I think before about, keep going. I was about to say, I think my voice is going to keep.
I think all purifications, Visuddhis, means with understanding. Just to give you a break, let me just ask Nina. I don't know if you remember Jitapala from a long time ago, but anyway, do you have anything you would like to bring up this afternoon, Nina? We're just giving him a little rest.
We last met Nina in your hotel about 5 years ago.
Okay, Jitapala says he met you when you were with us at the peninsula in our hotel 5 years ago. You may remember we had afternoon tea together, I think.
Yes. Well, Ajahn explained so well about citta as not self and about accumulations which are beyond control. And only understanding can, in the long run, very gradually eliminate. And she said so many things that we should again and again consider. And hardness, only what is touched now, and all the time Ajahn explains what is touched now, what is seen now, and to understand really what means citta is the chief in experience. We talked about that last time, because if there is no citta which experience an object, how can there be clinging or understanding? And even clinging is a reality, is a Dhamma. And there should be no selection about realities, because even akusala should be known. We don't try not to have akusala, but to understand it as a conditioned reality. Whatever is conditioned to arise is a Dhamma, Ajahn explains. Hardness arises now, seeing arises now, but do we know what is seeing and what is seen? All the time Ajahn comes back to seeing, because there is seeing all the time. So I find that very helpful, and especially what is seen. It is only a dot or some very, very tiny. It cannot be a cup or a chair, just what impinges on the eye sense. And we forget that. So we think at once of seeing people, and I'm doing this or that. So I found that there are so many points that Asha mentioned that we should turn over and consider again and again, because considering and discussing Dhamma like we do now is a way that understanding develops very gradually. But understanding is not me. And we still think it's I understand or I am ignorant. So this is so important to realize that there is no one and nobody, like Ajahn stresses again and again.
Is that true?
Can you paraphrase quickly? It's quite a long sentence.
Can you put it into 2 or 3 sentences,
Yes.
Nina, the main point?
Simple-minded. Yes. Are you saying it's important to understand anatta
Right, yes.
And what about anicca and dukkha?
Also,
So I
because what is anatta doesn't last for a moment, even for a split second. So it falls away immediately, never to return in samsara. Only one moment. That is so helpful if there is more, even intellectual understanding, not to cling to self.
yeah. So I mean, I think there's happiness if one can deeply understand anatta. There can be a lot of happiness there. Having been free of the idea of self, I think it's wonderful.
If it just arising and falling away, anicca, dukkha, anatta, is that enough?
I think one has to learn to see that more and more deeply. And again, using
It's
the one
not clear understanding at all.
depends.
Because what arises, what fall away, what is dukkha? See, more precise. Not just anicca, dukkha, anatta,
No,
but what?
No,
Anicca.
isn't this the function and the purpose of vipassana
So,
is to see things more
is
deeply?
this moment anicca?
These are rhetorical questions, of course. Of course.
But that's not enough. What is that in the moment? Just the moment we are talking about.
Well, there's so many things that can rise and fall away.
What?
It may be different for you and different for me at that moment.
Many things, but what is the one there to be known?
Techo, heat.
Pardon?
Heat element. That's just another.
Heat, body sense, techo.
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 Heat and cold temperature.
Does it now appear?
Can.
Not can. Does it now?
It can appear in the way of you want to use the word satipatthana. It can appear like that at times, or it may not appear because it's quite distinctive. It appears like that.
The question is not what can appear, but the question is what is now appearing? What is now appearing?
Well, it's
One,
different view and different.
Just
thing.
one.
I just said
They
one.
cannot appear together or at once.
Me. If for me. The mind, thought, I don't know. Whichever one you want to sit, like if you talk about seeing, obviously this usual worldly way of seeing, there's so much that goes on in that. You know, if we get
we don't talk about cetasikas, we don't talk about phassa, we just talk about the seeing itself, just seeing.
Yes. So,
it cannot be feeling, memory, or anything.
No, but
so now seeing is real.
Yes, whatever seeing is there is come and gone.
Anicca, dukkha, anatta, seeing.
If it's understood properly, yes. It's not. Seeing just has the
From
characteristic
now
of seeing.
on.
It just has the characteristics of seeing if it's understood.
Does it arise?
Undoubtedly, yes.
Does it fall away?
Yes.
Is that the meaning of anicca?
It is, but I think that it needs to be understood more deeply to really get the deep understanding of anicca. Of course, if you're going to build to like knowledge, true knowledge, then it's different to just understand.
There must be clear understanding of just one word, like anicca. What does it mean?
Well, according to your way of talking, it has
Not
to be understood.
way.
I might well, yes, this is a particular way of talking that somebody else might talk about anicca in a different way. So that it's just a mode of talking, trying to see that we're all talking in the same way, but somebody else might say differently. Then we don't have to agree with the words.
What is right? Nothing is anicca, but something is anicca.
No, everything is anicca.
So what's the
Sankara,
truth? Two different words. Nothing is anicca, but something, a reality, is anicca.
I don't find this useful to talk like this, Hachan, really. It's just going around in circles.
John's pointing out that you quoted Sabbe Sankara Anicca. So yes. Sankara is not everything. It is every Sankara-Dhamma.
It's every Sankara-Dhamma. Yes, so 5 khandhas,
so
or whatever you want to call it.
Everything.
It's everything except what is not Sankara. Is Sankara and
it's not concepts either. It's not concepts either.
No, it's not asankara.
So we can't use everything as a
Everything
as
that
a-
we
So that's the
experience.
point Ajahn is making, that it's conditioned dhammas that are anicca dukkha.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, really. Sabbe sankara. But the Buddha never said sabbe dhamma.
And what does it mean, anicca or anicca? Whatever arises falls away. Is that the meaning of anicca, not permanent?
Yes,
So is seeing anicca?
of course.
Okay. Okay. So seeing is a dhamma.
Yes,
It arises and falls away. Now,
yes.
can it be known?
Well, yes, because you obviously can see and think at the same time. So at the time you're thinking or experiencing something else, there's no seeking. So obviously it's changed.
So what is meant by enlightenment?
What is meant? Well, I prefer the word awakening actually, but awakening is when there's freedom from all defilements and knowing, the truth very, very well.
Can
So the
there
mind's very
be
peaceful.
can there be moment of understanding, seeing as no one and nothing at all
I think so.
from now on?
I think so. And also there's things like, if you go in the sutras, Buddha will talk about anicca sanya. So sometimes perception of sanya in anicca can be more powerful than at other times. Anatta sanya. Perception of anatta can be very powerful at times, so on. So it depends on the mind as well. But I mean, I think
What's the condition for enlightenment? Because you mentioned two things: freedom from defilements and knowing, as when describing enlightenment, which is not incorrect, but is it correct to say that it's the knowing that brings enlightenment and also brings the freedom from defilements, but it can't be said that freedom from defilements brings enlightenment?
my understanding is that there'll be, knowledge that a particular person, quotation marks, is awakened. So it's asavakya jnana, when all of the asavas are
right.
gone. So that's very obviously would be very clear and very powerful knowledge, and they would know that all of those things have gone completely.
What's the condition for the asavas to be gone?
A path of practice taught by the Buddha.
So
How do you get from talking?
You don't accept that it's the Maggajitta that eradicates the latent tendencies?
I said vipassana jnana at that moment. That's what I said.
Right. I'm just trying to, I'm not trying to misquote, I'm just trying to get to the
knowledge, right?
the crux. Yeah, that
Knowledge
it's
right at that
the freedom from defilements is a consequence of enlightenment, not a cause of enlightenment.
I would say that the defilements are being attenuated along the path, along the way. They don't, not that it's very gross defilements and suddenly they're gone. They're actually being whittled down as they go along.
Maybe so, but still, it's the jnana developing understanding that causes that attenuation, and that brings the Maggajitta, which then eradicates all latent tendencies, because prior to that, latent tendencies cannot be the object of any understanding or awareness.
Well, latent tendencies, but really strictly speaking, it's the fetters that go. So they're the
It's
important
another,
things that-
just a way of classifying the latent tendencies.
Well, there's 5 fetters that go at the time of somebody attains arahantship. 5 higher fetters they go.
If there are no latent tendencies, anusayas, can there be any samyojanas, any fetters that are arising?
The latent tendency, the nusaya, should go, but some people talk about that in different ways. They should go at that time.
I think this is quite an important point, because the development of the path, is it about developing understanding, the jnanas, or is it about reducing the defilements?
Both.
And so for you, there's a distinction. You wouldn't, you don't see it that the development of the jnanas also attenuates the defilements, causes the attenuation. You think that the attenuation is a separate kind of practice to the development of the understanding.
I'd say it's combined practice that makes the mind powerful, and also
What do you mean by a combined practice?
Making the mind powerful. That the jnanas only really work when there's nothing really happens until the jnanas, those 4 path moments before that, they're not really accomplishing letting go of fetters.
Panya Cetasika is developed at moments of mundane insight, right?
Yeah, I'm talking
When
about
there's awareness, sati sampajanya, for example,
Mhm.
the sampajanya is panya.
it's a way of talking about panya. And
Yeah.
so the commentary talks about 4 sampajanyas.
Right. So it's all panya though, the same mental factor, one and the same mental factor.
Well, I'd say that the panya that's in vipassana jnana is very powerful, can be very powerful, because either it'll see some part of our existence extremely clearly, and then it can see it so clearly that,
But it has to be developed.
of course,
Yeah.
it
It's
can- how can it become
developed by, as described in the Satipatthana Sutta, for example, and other suttas as well.
Sure.
And it's all about the development of that understanding.
Yes, and the Buddha.
And
gives
those
different
those
approaches.
suttas are not about attenuating the defilements as such.
There may be some suttas where the Buddha will, instruct a monk maybe to work on a suva or something like that to have less rust and things. Doesn't mean it gets rid of it, but it certainly.
Well, the Buddha
makes it
knew
a-
exactly what would be most helpful for an individual. But in terms of, we can't sort of take what he said to one monk as being a teaching about what is the factors that leads to enlightenment.
So what can we take what can we take? What can we take? Because there's different ways coming to understand the present moment, in my understanding, not just one.
Sarah wants to say something.
Was waiting to speak, and I was going to also ask Rosita.
Actually, I was wondering when you talked about attenuating defilements, what does that attenuating the defilements according to you?
Sorry if we can get mixed up in words sometimes. I mean, the only time defilements are really attenuated is at those path moments. That's the only time. So, and the second path is said to be attenuation rather than any complete removal of any fetters. So, but I think whittling down in a person who's, the Buddha would use training, whittling down defilements. So their mind becomes more subtle, less gross. Their actions become more subtle and less gross, and probably you could say their personality changes. Not everything just happens at the moment of path. Person who started off here being mindful, or whatever you want to call it, they've become their personality, and that has changed up to that point when they're almost a stream winner or whatever. They're a different person, in that the nature of their mind has changed, their mental habits have changed, and people will recognize that as well. They'll understand that person's got clarity, they've got peacefulness or whatever. It's not just you can just go along doing any old thing and then being mindful, and then you suddenly have path moment. It doesn't work like that, really. It can't work like that.
But in the suttas, we can see so many different individuals. Some of them have a lot of defilements even before the moment of enlightenment. Some people are very good conduct and very calm. So just, the outward appearance cannot be.
But there is a few examples of people, having been, as Jonathan mentioned, maybe somebody being drunk and hearing the teachings of the Buddha, and also as Angulimala, who's said to be a murderer. But I think maybe just look at ourselves. Hopefully we're calm people for practicing the Dharma. We're we're respectful people, we're people who care about others. It's just natural. It just naturally happens through. You can't practice the Dharma and not become, can't really, and not be, and be a bad person. It won't happen like that. It won't happen. You can't just do any old thing and keep going along. You actually change. Everybody here's changed. Every single person here would have changed since they've been practicing Dharma in their life. Otherwise, what would be the purpose of it all?
The question is what the Buddha taught
Yes.
about things.
Yes.
He didn't say to change. And that sort of thing. He didn't say, if you do what I say or follow my teaching, you will change and become a better person.
No, but he would comment on people. See, look, this person here used to be, you know, a butcher or something. Look at him now, how he's changed. He would say how that many examples.
After enlightenment.
Even before, even just people who would come along and listen to his teachings, understand some the Dhamma to some degree, or start being a moral person.
Right.
Many examples where the Buddha say, look,
but
what
apart from the anecdotal incidents, I mean, what we're trying to get at is the kernel of the Buddha's teaching about what cause leads to what result, or what are the crucial factors in the development of the path. I mean, anecdotally, there's lots of interesting characters to look at, but they don't necessarily help us understand the deep meaning of the Buddha's teaching.
So, I mean, I have faith in wide sections of the Buddha's teachings and the effectiveness of following what's in those teachings, but also there'll be some parts are useful for a particular individual and some parts aren't. So, for example, was it Kisa Gotami, when she attained enlightenment, he just saw the water disappearing in the sand, and she had a very strong impact of anicca in her mind. She became enlightened. Just anecdotes like that. There's lots of things like that. But I don't think one can say that everybody has to follow in exactly the same way. I just don't think it makes sense. And also you have to go back to the Sutra and the Vinaya and see, is this in the Sutra and Vinaya? If it's not, you have to go back to the original.
What lesson or principle do you draw from the Kita Gautami anecdote about the water disappearing in the sand?
Well, it stimulated the perception of impermanence in her. And then she...
For her?
Yes.
Just that's it.
Yes.
Just conditions. Someone else burnt their cakes in the oven, but that
Because
doesn't teach us anything about. If it teaches us anything, it's that understanding can arise at any moment by conditions.
So there's examples like that in the sutras.
But that person who became enlightened, everyone becomes enlightened by virtue of the development of understanding.
Yes.
Regardless of
so the question is
the circumstance that led up to it.
So the question is, how is that understanding developed? And I feel there's different approaches. That's all. And you need to be able to, for me, discuss other parts of the Dhamma and actually make sense of something like 4 Satipatthanas, rather than dismissing it and just say it's only 6 doorways. That's all. So that point is going to be a point of difference, Jonathan. Sorry, in this discussion.
Let me just ask, just like to ask Azita if she has any comments or any questions she'd like to bring up, or ask Ajahn or anyone.
Are you saying Zita or Azita? What? Can't hear you.
Hello, she asked you, Azita.
Oh, I couldn't hear what Sarah's saying. There was no sound coming through.
Do you have anything to ask?
I can hear you, Tom, but I couldn't hear Sarah.
Can you hear me now, Azita?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I just asked if you had any comments or any questions you wanted to bring up today.
Well, it's more of a comment than a question. And I was reading that the 2 dosa mula jittas, they're the only 2 jittas that arise with domanassa. And I guess I was thinking, gosh, some days it feels like there's a lot of domanassa, so presumably there's a lot of dosa mula jittas. And then I thought that if the feeling is more prominent or seemingly more prominent than the actual dosa itself, then is Vedana a guide to know what's happening, whether it's dosa mula jitta or lopa mula jitta? So yeah, that's probably my question. Is Vedana a guide to what's going on in terms of dosa or lopa? Forget about moha, because I don't think there's any, just those two, dosa or lopa.
Feeling, then for sure, dosa is there, has to be there. So it's a guide whenever it's unpleasant mental feeling, dosa must be there. But what about when it's pleasant feeling? Does it mean loba is there? Or what about moments of kusala, pleasant feeling too? Moments of kindness, moments of understanding, pleasant feeling, usually.
Right, yes.
So we cannot tell from the pleasant feeling.
Right, because part of my accumulation is being friendly to lots of people out there. I can start up a conversation with total strangers and or just greet strangers, and it's very pleasing for me. And I thought about that. Is this metta, or is this just sheer attachment of being, friendly to people? So yes, I take your second point. You don't know really.
Sort of attachment and some moments of metta and kindness. And when there's minding or wishing to have more metta, wishing to have less attachment, trying to have a personality with more kindness, it's just more and more clinging for sure. So the understanding understands whatever appears. It doesn't mind whether it's metta or loba, because it's just Dhamma. It's not my metta or my attachment.
I don't think there was, well, there might have been, but it was more thinking that, realizing that yeah, it's the feeling that seems to be more obvious. So yeah, okay, that's pretty well all that I need to say about it. Thank you.
And loba can also arise with upekha, with neutral feeling as well. So at that moment, the feeling is not as obvious. You like something, but not really cheerful about it.
Right. Yes. Yes. You're right. Thank you.
Be very, very slight attachment, just looking at the floor, or but also there can be kusala with upekkha, very slight, but usually both with pleasant feeling. And mostly when there's pleasant feeling, mostly it's attachment. Better to know.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that we are learning about what is there now to understand the truth that actually what is there cannot be taken for I or permanent thing at all. There is many cittasikas arising together with citta, but it does not appear as object. But we learn about it, about whatever is there, which is not the object of understanding yet. But one day, when there are more and more understanding of the truth, who knows what will be object of understanding, because all dhammas are anatta, no expectation to be aware of feeling or attachment or hardness or breath. Anything can be object of understanding to show the anatta-ness of who knows what will be the next moment. That's why if we don't talk about what is there now, how can there be the understanding of what is there now to be known as a reality until it can be moment of realization of the truth. So when we talk about realization or enlightenment, what? See, there must be the object of enlightenment. Otherwise, enlightened what? Can there be just enlightenment?
I mean, I understand that the at each path moment, then the mind would that nibbana would be experienced. So I don't think that that's an object. That's my understanding of it, and that's actually a condition for once the mind realizes the deathless at those points, then the fetters will leave at that time, because the mind's not left the conditioned reality and gone into the unconditioned. So the precondition is to go into that is the condition for the fetters to go completely.
Yeah, it's that seeing right now.
That's just changing the question.
Again,
Just changing, talking about something else and going on to that. And I really don't find it so.
and you know why we talk about it, seeing.
Because there's a particular mode of trying to understand the
Because
present.
not enough understanding of seeing yet.
Well, it depends. One doesn't know what's in the other person's mind. Can't really say. Once somebody understands this,
They
it
can
would
be
supposing.
thinking,
Well,
just thinking about seeing.
there may be, but it's very difficult to know exactly the state of another person's mind. So.
Otherwise, there cannot be different levels of understanding, intellectual understanding, pariyati, and it conditioned patipati.
Yes.
That's not enough. It has to be on and on into patipati, pativeda,
Yes.
and vipassana.
Yes.
So vipassana understands what? Because jhana is right understanding of what?
Well, it depends which jnana it is. So there's different types, whether it'll be understanding of impermanence, or they have different types of jnana.
Can it be seeing right now?
Could be, I don't know.
So if there's no understanding of seeing right now, how can there be moment of realizing the truth of it when it's there?
I think powerful wisdom can arise at any moment. It doesn't depend where one is, what one's doing. It can arise, but the nature of it is to be powerful. So.
That's why we have to consider each word carefully to understand the truth. There is seeing. Can there be moment of understanding seeing as it is not self or anyone at all?
Yes, but
yes, but if there's no understanding the nature of seeing right now, how can there be moment of realizing seeing?
My understanding is that some people will have more understanding of different objects, and some objects not so much, because the whole point is to deeply understand anicca, dukkha, anatta, and for the mind to let go. And so some people might have a particular type of sankhara they might understand much more deeply. Others might have another type. So, and the whole idea is for the mind to let go, and to let go of clinging in various ways. So some people, 6 doorways might be somebody's main thing, somebody else not.
So what's the meaning of anicca?
Didn't you ask me this before, Considine?
Yeah, again and again and again, and it appears. So what's just the meaning?
Well, if one comprehends that, if somebody were to comprehend that well, they would deeply understand it. There's no permanence in anything.
Does
they wouldn't
it
need to think about
mean
objects.
Whatever arises falls away?
Yes, but that's something that can be known very deeply. So that
never change. Whatever arises falls away.
People I think can understand it, so that they know that
they understand the meaning.
No, they can
but
understand.
what arises? And what falls away?
Sankharas.
Pardon?
Sankharas, conditioned dhammas.
Or Sankhara Dhammas?
Sankharas.
Which one now?
Anyone you choose. I don't-
Now, just now, because that which hasn't be now cannot be known.
Metta.
Only that which is
Metta.
there now can be known.
Metta.
So, what
Metta. Metta. That's the one you asked me just then. Metta.
is it now?
It was when you asked.
I don't think so. At moment of seeing, it's not metta.
No,
I think
no, you asked and I experienced metta.
That's
so
why there is seeing now is not really known or understood yet. Can there be a little more understanding of it in order to get closer to the nature which arises and falls away of seeing right now?
I mean, I understand that the whole theme is to become detached from what one sees, become detached from what one hears, and so on. So there's different, the mind can detach in different ways
And
according to each
if
individual.
there's not enough understanding of seeing right now so that it can appear as it's not permanent at all. How can there be the other really be known? Because seeing right now is not known.
But
So how can there be
if
the
there's no
expectation
understanding
for the
of
other
the
moment?
four elements right now, how can, it's what one understands.
So what do you think that we better talk about what is there now or not at this moment?
I think, yeah, I mean, there's some,
when you say the aim is one becomes detached from what is seen, what is heard, what is meant by one becomes detached? What becomes detached?
nobody, but it's just the mind is
What
gradually without attachment.
so what becomes detached?
The mind.
What do you mean by the mind?
One's core experience, whatever you want to call it. I mean, the mind is separate from the five sense doors. It's different, isn't it? So attachment is in the mind. It's the mind that gets attached to any of the sense objects or even the non-sense objects, like more subtle things. So,
But what, which reality or Sankhara Dhamma performs the function of attachment?
ultimately, be jnana, wisdom. So,
I don't think so. Vijnana cannot.
no, I said jnana, wisdom.
Jnana, right, yeah.
Okay.
So
Ultimately, well,
What
ultimately
about
and in the beginning.
what about now? What about now? When there's understanding of what is seen or what is heard, at that moment of understanding, is there detachment at that moment?
can be.
Yeah, so it's not one becomes detached, but at the moment of understanding, not can be, at that moment of understanding, there is detachment from what appears for a moment, no matter it's anger or boredom or visible object or sound. So it's not I become or one becomes, but panya.
Yeah, but the goal is not momentary detachment. It's really.
But the goal is always this moment, because there's no point thinking about, dreaming about enlightenment and higher vipassana jnana. What about understanding now? Because if there's no understanding now of seeing or what is seen, the detachment cannot grow.
If a person understands what's happening now, that will lead to vipassana jnana.
What is happening now?
Whatever you want to think. You could just words. You want to talk about
No,
seeing
because you talk a lot about the impermanence of things and what is happening now. Everyone, if you ask anyone in the street about now, they'll say, well, what is happening now? You know, I'm walking down the street and I'm seeing my friends, but what is happening
I don't
now?
want to limit it just to one doorway. That's all. If you want a specific answer, it can be other doorways. It might be body doorway or mind doorway.
The point of that I
doesn't
was
help.
getting at when she was asking which one is, the answer is one that appears.
Okay, so that can be any of the six doorways, correct?
Be any of the six
So
doorways.
that would be my answer. Any, yes, any
Yeah.
of any of the six
Not
doors.
select.
Not selective. So, but I don't talk about one all the time. It can be any if you're talking about that. One, yes.
And seeing invisible objects is one that is
It is.
appearing a
It
lot.
is.
And you
Well,
mentioned
close your
mind.
eyes. It doesn't appear at all.
Oh,
Or actually, you might see black. You might see black or something. Will make you blind. It's all right.
And you mentioned mind and as being mind, or what about seeing? Is it mind? Is it chitta?
It's vijnana. It's not the,
So chitta is the same as vijnana. It's the same as mano.
No.
Same meaning.
no,
Each one.
no. You can have quite a debate about the difference between vijnana, mano,
I can find you a sutta which says chitta, vijnana, mano, just the same.
Oh, so what is the citta in Chittanupassana? What's being talked about there?
Chitta, which is the object of understanding. So
Well, no, the
seeing
Buddha
is
says
chitta,
he doesn't talk about seeing there. He talks about
chitta with
particular-
loba, any chitta,
well, it's not in the Chittanupassana. It's not discussed about scenes.
but any chitta
It's not-
is chitta. Any chitta is chitta.
Well,
I think this is a side issue.
yes.
What about if we don't name
Mhm.
anything now,
Mhm.
but what is there?
You want me to give a name to something without
Yes,
saying?
something there. Even we don't use the word chitta, vijnana, hatya, and so on. But the nature of it, what is there before we can give name?
It'll be exactly what the sankharas name has. What are the khandhas? What that name, whether it be heat or whatever, sound, whatever.
Can
So-
we say that there must be a reality which arises and experience an object?
There always is. There always
No
is.
name yet.
And,
Just
you know,
about the moment when
Yes.
it's there arising and experiences the object. For example, seeing sees, and there must be that which is seen,
yes.
right or wrong.
When seeing sees, it sees visible object. Yes.
Okay, seeing is real.
Yes.
It's a reality.
Yes.
It's a Dhamma.
Yes. So
Yes or no?
yes, we've agreed on this a few
Yes,
times.
whatever is real is a Dhamma. So seeing is a Dhamma which arises to experience. Whenever it arises, it has to experience an object.
Yes.
Never change.
Yes.
Okay. And the object which is seen,
Well, rupa, which is
if
visible
you
object.
don't give it any name,
Well, that's what it's seen. Visible object. Rupa is a Pali word for it. So
can we change the word from rupa?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
So we make agreement, we change it from the word rupa to something else, and we understand what we
It's just a
mean.
term for visible object. That's a Pali.
But the truth is that it is a reality which cannot experience anything.
Yes.
Okay, so there are two different kinds of realities which arises. One arises and experience, and the other arises but it cannot experience.
Yes.
Which one is I?
No, I.
Okay, no I, never
No.
be I.
No, there's not really, but I mean, it depends on people's conditioning. They will
So
think it's an
when
I.
there
I
is
see.
the idea of I is wrong,
Yes, that would be misunderstanding. But that's the way of the world. Is to take
and
it as
is that moment real? Wrong understanding?
it would also be that some sort of sankhara, that misunderstanding, taking it for I. That would also be a sankhara.
Take it for I. Is it wrong?
I don't know, right or wrong. It's not. It's grasping and
When
it's something
it's
the wrong
not
way.
I, when it's not I, but one takes it for I see.
Yes.
Is that wrong?
Yes. It's wrong understanding, and about wrong, but it's wrong.
So there must two kinds of understanding:
Yes.
right understanding and wrong understanding.
Yes.
Are they the same?
Obviously not.
Are they chitta, the experiencing, the chief of experiencing?
I don't know. I don't know.
No, that's why chitta is different from cetasikas.
Yeah, I mean, in Sutta Jittas, there's the Jetasikas are usually said to be different sorts of sankharas. There's grouped under sankhara.
If you don't use the term sankhara dhamma and so on, it arises and it experiences the object. It likes or dislikes that object,
Yes.
but it's not chitta, which just arises.
Pure experience. Yes.
It's a chief of experiencing the object clearly. That's all.
Yes.
And that which arises with it experience the same object, but not as clear as it, because it has the characteristic of being attached to that object.
Yes, or averse to it as well.
So it's different from chitta.
Yes, different.
So it is cetasika.
Yes.
How many Jetasikas are there?
Oh, my old Abhidhamma study on no 7 or something. I don't know. I haven't really studied Abhidhamma for 40 odd years. I don't know.
Yeah, sorry. In sutta terms, of course, it's Vijnana Kanda and 4 Chitta.
Sorry.
Vijnana Kanda.
Kanda, yeah. And Sankara, the Jetasikas.
Sankara Kanda plus Sanya
Sanya.
and Vedana.
And
So
generally, actually went through the suttas once and got all the Jetasikas in the suttas
Yeah.
under Sankara. Yes.
So we're just talking about things that are in the suttas, in the
Yeah.
old suttas
Yes.
too.
Yes.
But we don't have to exactly stick to that terminology if we want to use Jitta instead of Vijnana. It doesn't matter. We're talking about the same
I think
reality.
it does. I think the Buddha will use Jitta in a different sense to Vijnana, often in the suttas. I think it's Manopabhangama Jitta. No, that's sorry, it's Manopabhangama. There's many suttas where the Buddha would use Jitta in a different way.
Anyway, I was just sorry for interrupting, but I was just making the point. We're talking about things that are in the suttas very clearly.
Good to have clear understanding of 5 khandas, right?
Mhm.
Can they be 6?
Why would there be 6?
Can
That's
they be-
enough. The Buddha actually said
That
taking
is-
the khandas is a great burden. And it's a great relief to let down those 5 khandas, not to be attached
So
anymore.
what is meant by khanda?
Well, the classification is different aspects of mind and body, nama and rupa. That's it. And most of them, there's 4 in the mental category, and there's rupa, which
But
is
the main
rupa.
characteristic of that which arises and falls away, Atita, Anakata, and Paccuppanna.
Yes, but also the way you taught Archanas to know the characteristics of, know what characteristics of sanya is, for example, or know what the characteristic of manasikara, to actually know those things. That's
All
the way you teach.
conditioned
Yes, but-
realities
but-
arise
Yes,
and fall away.
but also teaching to know the lakkhana, or
That's
the
right.
characteristics of
The
those
past
individual
is not
people.
the future and not the present,
Mhm.
near and far and so on, depending on what we are talking about. What is the nearest rupa?
I have to think about that. I don't know, kaya, I guess, body.
But it's nothing to do with seeing.
Can be if you look at your own, you think that's yourself, you think your body's yourself, but no, it's experience.
That's why each word has the meaning of its nature. But we better not talk about it in detail, just about whatever can be known clearer and clearer. For example, what is meant by khanda, that which arises and falls away.
Yes, but also there's other ways
Okay.
of understanding it.
So whatever arises, falls away is khanda.
Part of panchakanda.
Is khanda.
Yes.
One khanda.
Yes.
And so what is meant by 5 khandas?
Well, in the Buddha said to understand the arising and falling of Vijnana Kanda, Rupa Kanda, Sanya Kanda, and so on. To understand those things, yes, instructed the monks in that
In
way.
other words, any conditioned reality,
No.
any conditioned Dhamma is Kanda because it arises and falls away. Any Rupa is Rupa Kanda. Any Vedana is Vedana Kanda
Yes.
because it arises and falls away.
Yes.
And the point is no one, no thing there, just different conditioned dharmas that arise and fall away, different realities.
Yes, but
When we talk about 5 khandas, we're talking about all Sankara Dhammas.
they're all Sankara Dhammas. But
Right.
then there's Sankara Kanda as well.
So yes, but I mean, if the Buddha talks about understanding the khandas, the meaning is the object of the understanding is actually as any Sankara Dhamma. There's no
He
such
would-
thing as understanding, because khanda is a classification, not
He would talk about understanding separately in contemplation, knowing when there's feeling arising and falling away, knowing when there's rupa arising and falling away, and so on.
Yes,
In
yeah.
the suttas, exactly like
so
that.
individual Sankara Dhammas.
Yeah. we should say.
And another word, upadana khanda.
Upadana Kanda, grasping Kanda, that comes into sutta somewhat. Upadana Kanda. Okay, yeah, I get you. Sorry.
So when the hardness is the object of clinging, then it is kanda whenever it arises. And when it's the object of clinging, it's upadana
Yes,
kanda. So
yes.
kanda and upadana kanda.
So we want to get to anupadana kanda, the kandas without clinging.
Whenever clinging, upadana arises, it's the clinging to that object,
Yes,
any of
Yes.
the 5 khandas.
yes.
And why Buddha pointed out 5 khandas
What do you think?
is so very important,
Mm.
because we live in the world of rupa. So rupa is the object at any time, object of clinging, greatly clung to the whole body.
Yes,
See, even the eyes, whatever, the hair and so on.
yes,
That's why it should be known as it's not permanent. Even we cling to it so much, but it's not there anymore. Just cling to that which is not there. How full it is. Ignorant. That's why if there's no understanding of the rupa, there must be clinging to it.
yes,
But when there's the understanding that it's not there anymore, depending on how much clear understanding is there,
yes,
that's why just intellectual understanding cannot eradicate any wrong understanding or attachment and ignorance at all. Because it's so very deep. That's why it has to be learned that now we're talking about just superficial of it, the skin of it, but deeply down there, arising and falling away in darkness. What is meant by in darkness?
in darkness, ignorance, not knowing. That'd be one meaning, but other people can answer it.
Just one doorway, light.
Darkness, you're talking about physical darkness. With the darkness of ignorance, of what you might have been talking about.
2 meanings. One is we can talk about the darkness of ignorance, but also Ajahn's talking about when visible object is not seen, then there's no light seen. So hearing is in darkness, touching is in darkness, thinking is in darkness. The world is dark at every other moment except when visible object appears. And when you said before, when we want to get to anupadana, but the goal is not we want to get anywhere. When there's understanding, no wanting, no wishing, no trying at all. So it's the opposite of wanting, wishing, trying.
There's lots of discussions about that, and there's things like Dhamma chanda. So chanda is like enthusiasm or wanting to do, and many places you'll see discussion about whether there's grasping in that Dhamma chanda or not. But there has to be, there has to be faith in the teachings and actually wanting to free the mind or realize liberation. And eventually, if one goes along and practices, and then wanting will go, there'll be more and more detachment. But there has to be some sort of kusala chanda, some sort of desire. Otherwise, one just doesn't do anything. And so that's often discussed. So like chanda is, Dhamma chanda is actually, I think, one of the powers or balas. I can't remember all those classifications.
Yes. But it's the kusala interest that develops with understanding to strong enough to be the power, strong enough to be the enlightenment factor, the opposite of wanting, wishing, trying. So
that's what I more or less
the
said.
Wanting, wishing, the desire is chanda with lobha,
yes,
both with pleasant feeling. So the Dhamma chanda, the kusala chanda, is the interest in understanding the truth, the interest in understanding, but not wanting or wishing for anything. Because if there's wanting to have lesser kusala, wanting to be free, wanting to have detachment, it's the wrong path. It hinders the development of the right path and the kusala chanda.
Yes, there has to be that fine line between wanting to do something and letting go of to do it. It's a fine line, I think.
Today is a little more understanding of the first noble truth. And the understanding is the path leading to enlighten the first noble truth. It doesn't mean just talk about it, But it can be the regular experience to let go the idea of self or cling to that as something.
We can finish now. So thank you everyone at home. And tomorrow we have the discussion.